It's 6:58 on a Tuesday morning, and you're standing in the kitchen holding a phone you keep face down on the counter now, out of a habit you never announced to anyone. Through the window, your neighbor is filming himself in front of his new Audi, the one he leased in March, angling the shot so the badge catches the light. He doesn't see you. You watch for a second, then look away. Your car in the driveway is a 2013 Elantra with 149,000 miles and a dent in the passenger door you've stopped meaning to fix. Your brokerage app is open on the counter next to the coffee. You glance at it the way you glance at the weather, not because you're anxious, because you're not. $511,000. You lock the phone, you rinse your cup, you drive the Elantra to work. Nobody who sees you this morning would guess any of it, and that's not an accident anymore. It used to be. 3 years ago, that man filming his Audi would have made something in your chest tighten. Today, it barely lands. Something changed in how you think about money and about being seen. Not overnight, not with a windfall. It started with a sentence someone said to you almost in passing, one you didn't understand until much later. This is the story of how you stopped building an image and started building wealth, quietly, on paper, in a way nobody scrolling past your life would ever notice. Rewind 6 years. You're 25, you just landed a coordinator job at a media agency, and the offer says $52,000. You read it twice in the parking lot before you tell anyone. That weekend, you don't buy a car exactly, but you do something that feels just as urgent. You upgrade your phone, you buy the jacket you saw a creator wearing, and you start posting like a person whose life is going somewhere. The jacket is $280 on a card you carry a balance on. It feels like proof you've arrived. Your checking account, most weeks, sits under $500. You don't think of this as a problem. You think of it as normal. Everyone you know lives this way, performing forward, borrowing against a version of themselves that photographs well. Your friend Marcus performs loudest. Marcus is 27, works in sales, and treats his life like a feed that has to be fed. Marcus has a personal brand. He says the words personal brand more than you'd expect a person to say them. He leases a car he can post from, buys the watch he can angle on a wrist, rents an apartment with a view he mentions in the first 10 minutes. Marcus isn't stupid, and he isn't lazy. He makes about what you make. He has simply decided, the way most people decide without deciding, that the point of money is to be witnessed. You don't judge him for it. You do the same thing. You just do it with a jacket instead of a watch. One Sunday, your aunt's old friend Gloria comes by for dinner. She's 71, wears the same gray cardigan she's worn to every family thing for a decade, and drives a 2006 Camry with a cracked taillight held together with tape. Somebody asks her, half joking, why a woman who sold her printing business for more than the rest of the family will ever see still drives that Camry. Gloria says, an image is something you rent from other people's opinions. I stopped paying that rent a long time ago. Nobody laughs. Exactly. Nobody really answers. You turn it over for maybe 11 seconds, and then the conversation moves on. But the sentence doesn't leave. It sits there, uncomfortable, the way a true thing sits when you're not ready to hear it. That night, you open your bank app in bed. $290 in checking. $2,300 in credit card debt. Zero in anything a person could call an investment. You're 25, making $52,000, and on paper you are worth less than nothing, while your profile suggests a life that's arriving. You don't do anything about it that night, but you don't forget it either. A few weeks later, Marcus shows you a photo of the watch he's been eyeing, a steel thing that costs $3,800. He isn't bragging, not exactly. He genuinely believes it will feel different once it's his, the same way you believed the jacket would. And for about 6 weeks after he buys it, it does. That night you open your credit card statement instead of ignoring it, which is new. $2,300 at 23.9% is costing you around $46 a month just to exist, going nowhere. And you do that math 3 times because you don't want it to be true. It takes 4 more months to actually act, and even then it isn't dramatic. You open a brokerage account on a Tuesday during lunch, sitting in your car because you don't want anyone at the office to glance over and ask what you're doing. You put in $75. That's it. $75 into an index fund while your card still says $1,900. Nobody knows. There's no post. Nothing about your life looks different the next day or the next month. You stop buying the jacket version of things. You set up an automatic transfer, $75 out of every paycheck before you can see it, before you can spend it. You bump it to $150 the month you finally clear the card. This period of your life is honestly a little boring. There's no scene here worth posting. You're not chasing a stock tip. You're not doing anything clever. You're doing the same unremarkable thing every 2 weeks. And the boringness is, it turns out, the entire mechanism. Marcus upgrades his lease that year to something with a bigger badge. You notice. You don't say anything. You start paying attention to Gloria instead, who never gives advice directly, who just talks at holidays about how she ran her shop, how she never bought anything to be seen with, how the loudest person in any room was almost never the one who still owned anything 20 years later. By the time you're 28, the account has quietly crossed $31,000. Nobody in your life knows this number. Your apartment still has the same secondhand couch. Your phone is 2 generations old and you've stopped caring. From the outside, nothing about you has changed at all. That's the part that starts to feel interesting. The gap between what people assume about you from your feed and what's actually true is widening, and you're the only one who can see it. You're 30 when the account crosses $88,000, and this is the first time a number in your life keeps you up at night, but not the way $2,300 in debt once did. It's the market that does it. A correction hits in the spring, and over 6 weeks you watch $88,000 shrink to $64,000. $24,000 gone from a screen in the time it takes most people to plan a vacation. You check the app 4 times a day for a week. Your hands actually go cold the first time you see it as a percentage instead of a number, because a percentage feels worse somehow, more final. You call Gloria, not really to ask for advice, just to talk to someone who won't panic with you. She says, "You didn't lose anything, you sold nothing. The account is smaller on a Tuesday, it won't be smaller forever, and even if it is, forever is a long way from Tuesday. You don't sell. You keep the $150 running through the whole correction, buying shares cheaper than they'd been in 2 years, which feels insane in the moment and only makes sense from a distance. 6 months after the bottom, the account isn't just back to $88,000, it's at $103,000. That same year, a real offer comes, a senior role at a competitor, $79,000 base, and a stipend the company frames as a lifestyle allowance, $600 a month, enough to lease something you could very much post from. You take the job. You do not take the lease. You put the $600 straight into the brokerage account, on top of what's already going in, and you keep driving the Elantra, which by now has a crack in the windshield you've decided not to fix because fixing it costs $360, and the windshield still, technically, lets you see the road. Here's what nobody tells you about that decision. The $600 you didn't spend on looking successful and instead put into the market isn't just $600. Over the next 25 years, left alone to compound at a reasonable historical average, it becomes something closer to $720,000. The lease would have bought you 3 years of a nice badge in your photos, and then nothing. The transfer buys you a version of your future you can't quite see yet, sitting in an Elantra with a cracked windshield, which is exactly why almost nobody chooses it. It doesn't look like anything is happening. That's the whole trick. You're 32 the year something shifts, that has nothing to do with a raise. You pull up the account one Sunday, a habit now, coffee, one screen, 5 minutes, and you notice the growth. That quarter was larger than what you'd contributed from your paycheck. Not close. Larger. You check the math twice because it doesn't feel real. Your contributions that quarter, $2,700. The account's growth from the market alone, $4,400. The money is making more than you are for the first time, without you doing anything at all. This is the part nobody explains well, because it doesn't look like anything. There's no ceremony. You don't feel richer walking into work Monday morning. But something in the arithmetic of your life has quietly reversed. For 7 years, your labor funded the growth. Now, the growth is starting to fund itself, and eventually it will start funding you. That winter, your laptop dies and your car needs brakes the same week, $2,400 together. 3 years earlier, that number would have required a card and several months of quiet stress. Now you move it from checking without doing math in your head first. You already know you can. It barely registers. Your girlfriend, Renata, is with you when the mechanic reads out the number and she watches you say, "Sure, go ahead," and hang up. You didn't even flinch, she says. You tell her you used to flinch at $200. She's quiet for a second, then asks the question that ends up mattering more than either of you realizes yet. So, why do you keep everything so plain? You don't have a clean answer for her that night. You will, eventually. It just isn't the answer she's expecting. By 34, the account is past $360,000, and the changes in your life are almost entirely invisible to anyone who isn't looking closely. You do finally replace the Elantra, but you pay cash for a 2-year-old Camry, $21,000, and you feel almost nothing doing it. No thrill, no relief. It's a transaction, the way buying groceries is a transaction. Marcus, when he sees it, asks why you didn't get something you could actually post. You tell him the truth. You can afford almost anything now, which is exactly why you don't feel the need to prove it with a car. That same year, your company dangles a bigger title, Director of the Division, $31,000 more, and 80-hour weeks under a manager whose reputation for burning people out arrives a decade ahead of him. You turn it down. It's the first purely financial decision of your adult life that isn't actually about money at all. 3 years earlier, turning down $31,000 would have felt reckless. Now it feels like the most rational thing you've ever done, because the money would buy you almost nothing your money doesn't already buy, and it would cost you the one thing it can't buy back, which is your evenings. Marcus, meanwhile, takes the equivalent leap at his company the same year. New title, new lease, a bigger badge, a mortgage that stretches him past what feels comfortable, though he'd never say that out loud, and a feed that has never looked better. You don't judge him for it. He's chasing the same thing you were chasing 8 years ago in a $280 jacket. He's just further into it, and the stakes are bigger now. When your parents' furnace fails that spring, $9,000, an emergency by any normal measure, you cover it without telling anyone at the table it wasn't a stretch. Your dad thanks you like it cost you something. It didn't, not really. And that gap between what he assumes it cost you and what it actually cost is the clearest evidence yet of how far you've come. Here's what nobody tells you about getting quietly wealthy. It changes your relationship to almost everyone around you, and not always in the direction you'd expect. At 37, your net worth crosses $720,000, and you notice you've stopped bringing up money entirely. Not because you're hiding it, but because there's no longer a version of the conversation that doesn't feel strange in one direction or another. When old friends vent about a $400 repair, you understand the stress is real to them, but you can't fully access it the way you used to, and pretending you can feels dishonest. A cousin gets short with you over text for a month after you mention a good year, for reasons neither of you says out loud. A friend from college asks for a loan the week after you let one number slip, so you start editing yourself. Not lying, just leaving things out. It's the first cost that has nothing to do with money. Marcus's lease gets voluntarily surrendered the following January. Nobody saw it coming, including Marcus. His income never dropped, he just kept adding obligations against it, the way people do when the visible version of success is the only version anyone's tracking. You cover a month of his rent quietly, the same way your accounts grew quietly, and neither of you mentions it again. His feed, that whole month, looks exactly as good as it always did. You realize, slowly, that the loneliness isn't about the money itself. It's that almost nobody in your life can see it, and the few who catch a fragment sometimes resent what they see. Being underestimated used to feel like an advantage. At some point, it started feeling a little lonely too, being financially unreadable to almost everyone who's known you your whole life. There's a cost to this Gloria never mentioned at that dinner table, maybe because there wasn't a clean way to say it, or maybe because you had to find it yourself before it would mean anything. Renata asks you that same year if you're happy. Not fine. Happy. You have to actually sit with it instead of answering right away, which surprises you more than the question does. You tell her the truth. You're not unhappy, but you expected the number to feel like an ending, and instead it feels like a fact. It sits there. It doesn't announce itself. It just is what it is, the way weather is what it is, and you're the only one who checks it. You catch yourself wondering whether the version of you at 25, panicking over a $2,300 balance and posting a life he couldn't afford, was in some ways more alive to his own days than you are now. It's not a comfortable thought. You don't dwell on it. But it's the first time you understand that Gloria's cardigan and her taped-up Camry were never really about money at all. They were about a woman who'd made peace with being invisible in exchange for being free. And nobody had told you there might be a toll on that particular road. It's 6:58 on a Tuesday morning again, a different Tuesday, 6 years further into the story, and you're standing in the same kitchen holding a phone you still keep face down, though the old cracked one lives in a drawer now, for reasons you've never fully explained to Renata. Through the window, the neighbor is filming himself in front of a newer Audi. He doesn't see you. Your car in the driveway is the Camry. 4 years old now, paid off since the day you bought it. Your brokerage app is open on the counter, $1,180,000. You look at it the way you glance at the weather. You lock the phone. You drive to a job you chose to keep, not one you're stuck in. Gloria passed 2 winters ago. At the service, her niece mentioned, almost as an aside, that she'd left behind far more than anyone in the family had ever guessed, quietly, in accounts nobody had known to ask about, and a Camry with 210,000 miles the dealership tried to buy for scrap. You didn't say much that day. You just thought about a sentence from a dinner table a decade earlier, and about a jacket you bought to feel like somebody, and about how the whole story of getting here was never really about the number at all. It was about who spent their life being seen, and who spent theirs being free. If this story made you think differently about the difference between building an image and building wealth, hit the like button and subscribe. There are more stories like this one coming, and I'm curious, is there something in your own life right now that you're buying to be seen instead of investing to be free? Tell me in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.